Hello and welcome back to Aetheral Space 14.11 Dessert. Donnell was just talking about how 10 courses are enough for him.
Yeah, I'm hungry as fuck. Also, my
The
throat's a
greed
little
of a beast
scratchy.
indeed.
Yeah, dude, I'm hungry.
Born
But
on the
that's
floor.
not important. Right now it's dessert, and there's only 2 hours left in Azumha common time. Is that not right?
That's correct.
Alright, then let's begin. 1755. The night exploded into chaos. Appointment moved first, diving down from the sky, thrusters flaring behind him like aurora borealis. His aim was clear: to enter the shopping center through the hole his schedule breaker had created, and quickly execute his targets. Even he knew that was unlikely, however. It wasn't just for the sake of potential further targets arriving that had stayed the hands of the bounty hunters around this place. Each and every one of them knew that the first to attack would become a target as well. None of them wanted to be beaten to the punch, after all. Deploying Praetorian 1, Praetorian 2, generated, deploying, Praetorian 3, generated, deploying, Praetorian 4, generated, deploying, Praetorian 5, generated, deploying. 3 of the Praetorians intercepted Appointment just before he could reach the roof. Praetorian 1 whipped out a shining rapier and thrust thrice at Appointment's head, so fast that the triplet stab seemed a single motion. Praetorian 2 sprouted 4 additional arms and then fused the limbs together with the 2 original, forming a massive cannon that it fired at Appointment. Praetorian 3 opened a hole in space next to it, and from that hole flew a blizzard of knives pelting against Appointment's armor. Appointment, for his part, responded. He infused his chassis venting system to form a layer of frozen air around his helmet, deflecting Praetorian 1's attack. He engaged his chassis thrusters to flip, avoiding Praetorian 2's massive cannonball by inches, the projectile slamming into a nearby skyscraper and decapitating it instead. He flared his thrusters once more to weave through the rain of tiny projectiles. In this situation, his mobility was limited, but even a limited Appointment was better than most. As Appointment cleared the last of the attacks, he just floated in the air for a moment, surrounded on 3 sides by the Praetorians who had stayed to stall him. The remaining 2 had dived into the shopping center to take advantage. A cold bead of sweat ran down Appointment's temple. If he didn't hurry, they were going to beat him to the targets, and as if that wasn't bad enough, he'd fail his mission. Is this the same Praetorian 1 as before?
This is the one that was originally talking in the meeting.
Emojis?
No, that was Praetorian 2. Who no longer
Appoint-
exists.
Alas. Excuse me. Appointment! Mused Praetorian 1 in its regal voice, holding its rapier up to its face as it floated on white feathered wings. I'm glad to see your skills haven't decayed since our last encounter. I truly thought you were going to feel Dignity's kiss just now. Appointment narrowed his eyes behind his helmet. Ideally, he'd have liked to blow these pests away and hurry to his destination. But this wasn't one he could take so lightly. The Praetorians, the elite soldiers of the Hive of Malkuth, were bespoke consciousnesses generated by the Queen for specific tasks. If there was a battle she couldn't leave to the instincts of a mere drone or warrior, she would create a Praetorian with intelligence and personality to handle the matter. By nature, they were temporary existences, discarded as soon as they were no longer useful. Praetorian 1 alone had never stopped being useful. Why are we even bothering to speak to this stain? Praetorian 3 asked in a sultry, feminine voice, cocking its head. Let's just wipe it away and be done with it. Praetorian 2 grunted in agreement. Silence! Praetorian 1 snapped sternly. A powerful enemy deserves a level of decorum. Do not forget that I am your superior in this matter, 3, as I am in all others. Its compound eyes flicked back over to Appointment. My friend, surely there is an opportunity for compromise here. Inside that treasure chest below are targets to spare. Perhaps we can agree to split the stock between ourselves. Appointment snorted. Praetorian 1 cocked its head. Is something amusing, good sir? Good sir?
It's a nice show, Bog, but I'm not buying it. A hive mind having infighting? You're just stalling while your buddies take care of business down there. Right.
There was a moment of silence. Then Praetorian 1 sighed. Very well, it said. 3, wipe as you will. She didn't need greater permission than that. Laughing wildly, Praetorian 3 threw her hands out, palms broiling with bloody red aether. Die, sanguine! She screamed, and a torrent of red smoke poured forth, washing over Appointment nearly instantly. He blasted up out of it just as quick, flying straight up into the sky, but even that brief contact had made its mark. The outermost layer of his chassis armor had turned sloppy and wet like a melted candle, drops of molten metal falling down into the battlefield below. Twitches of his fingers sent commands to his onboard systems, cooling to harden his melted armor again, overdrive to push his thrusters further and increase his speed, preparation sequences for higher-grade missiles and firearms. Tonight he'd need to be in top form. A warning flashed from his chassis. The predictive systems of the suit elevated to near precognition by the level of his infusion, and so he did not doubt it. His thruster shifted across his back, sending him into a spin, allowing the second cannonball fired by Praetorian 2 to slip right past him and off into the distance. That didn't mean the danger was over, though. During his spin, Appointment had caught sight of the first cannonball Praetorian 2 had fired. The shattered remains of it were still lodged in the ruined building. Only, he realized now that it wasn't a cannonball. It was an egg. A cloud of black locusts had exploded out of the sphere, and were now surging through the sky towards Appointment. He assumed the enemy wouldn't have dispatched them if they weren't capable of getting through his armor. Taking care of them should be a priority. It was just a shame that he was being given so many priorities tonight. The locusts coming from one side, the red smoke from the other. Both were fast. He needed to deal with them at the same time. Instinct and experience allowed him to put together a plan in the time it took to blink.
Schedule breaker!
The blazing pillar of Schedule Breaker shot down from the sky, enveloping the red smoke before it could reach Appointment. This close to midnight, no petty ability would be able to survive its light. At the same time, he pointed his index finger towards the incoming locusts, and fired the flamethrower wired into the digit. Infused with his aether, the weapon was able to produce an inferno of blue flame that scorched the insects out of existence. That only left... Ow! Appointment looked down, and saw the thin blade of a rapier protruding from his stomach. "Indeed," chuckled Praetorian 1 from behind him. "You truly were a formidable opponent." "Huh?" said Morgan. The enemy descended like a boulder, slamming into the floor and sending clouds of dust flying in every direction. Anatrice raised her hands to cover her face as the air pressure billowed against her body. Without infusion, she likely would have been sent flying just from that alone. A silhouette pushed its way out of the smoke, a hulking, biomechanical figure, built like a gorilla, compound eyes and veins glowing a malevolent red. It grinned with teeth fused to its lips like prison bars. "Gah ha ha!" it guffawed. "Good evening, you damn meat smears! The great Praetorian 4 has come to end your worthless—" Anatrice widened her eyes. "Ego emulation, Gustavo Mordecai!" Wasn't that the guy who died in Arc 10?
Yeah.
Gustavo narrowed his eyes. The situation was bad. 2 enemies had definitely come through the ceiling just now, not one. One was grabbing their attention while the other prepared for a sneak attack. As if that wasn't bad enough, based on their appearance and the way they had identified themselves, they were most likely units from the Hive of Malkuth. That meant there was no telling what kind of absurd abilities they'd come equipped with. Before anything else, that needed to be determined. Brown aether ran through Gustavo's legs as he lunged forward, ducking under the arm of the clawed woman and darting right into Praetorian 4's face. There was a cry of warning from behind him as the beast raised its massive arm, but he was ready for it. He dodged to the side, avoided the crushing blow, then kicked off the wall to shoot himself towards Praetorian 4's head once again. Contact was made, his palm placed against the abomination's face. Changelog download! Information flowed directly into Gustavo's mind. Praetorian 4 changelog, 5 minutes. Came into existence. Hello world. Oh, this is cute. It's like a computer programming thing. That's awesome. Came into existence. Hello world. Received ability. Bunyan Drive 1. Allows user to increase their size and strength based on the numbers of enemies attacking them. Received ability. Bunyan Drive 2. Allows user to increase their size and strength based on their level of injury. Received ability. Bunyan Drive 3. Allows user to increase their size and strength based on the demonstrated strength of their opponent. Okay. So, gets stronger and bigger the more people attack them. Stronger and bigger the more they're hurt. Stronger and bigger the stronger their enemy is.
Yes.
Wow. Received ability, King of Karumpa. Allows user to adopt traits of animal life forms they have previously defeated in combat. Received ability, sustained superficial damage by crashing through ceiling. Minor increase of size from ability Bunyan Drive 2. As Praetorian 4 went to rip Gustavo's hand away, he vaulted over the creature and kicked off its shoulders, launching himself up into the smoke cloud. The second enemy. He hadn't seen this one yet, but he knew it had to be here. For a sneaky opponent like this, they'd be in the one spot nobody could see. He plunged into the smog and, for an instant, saw them. Another Praetorian, much smaller than its companion, the size of a child, even. Gustavo tried not to think about the implications of that. It was fluttering high up with wings like those of a fly, the shine of its compound eyes intensifying as it spotted Gustavo. Too late. He wrapped his hand around its thin ankle. Changelog download! Praetorian 5 changelog. 5 minutes. Came into existence. Hello world! Received ability, Flutterfly. Allows user to place insect wings on themselves and other entities. These wings can be activated at will. Received ability, Void Contract. Allows user to sacrifice the lives of their subordinates for weapons of equivalent value. Received ability, Gut Inventory. Allows user to record and store consenting entities within their own body. When this ability is released, all stored entities are manifested at once. Partial use is not permitted. Gustavo took a deep breath. Changelog, upload! And transmitted the gathered information to his allies. Only one thing still bothered him. As Praetorian 5 shook his hand away and he fell back down into the hallway, Gustavo's brow furrowed. That third ability. Gut Inventory? Wouldn't Changelog tell him if they had eaten anyone?
In the last 5 minutes it would. But obviously it's messy with the Hive of Malkuth, because some of them have abilities that interact with other abilities, so like the one that originally recorded it may not have been this one, and it has the ability to transfer it to someone else.
Oh, okay. Nice patching up of the plot hole. Sorry, my throat's like not feeling well.
It's okay.
I don't know what's going on. It's like
Who hurt
scratchy
you?
and hurty.
Who did this to you?
Illness.
I just don't know. I have to suffer like this.
I actually don't know. It's kind of worrying me a little bit. I should get a cough drop. The Hive of Malkuth had not spent its time on Azumha in idleness. There could only be 108 true members of the Hive at any given time. The same did not hold true for their thralls. The new recruits, so to speak. They were extremely limited in terms of the duties they could perform. Basic movement and attack, putting them just barely above animated corpses in terms of utility. The Queen generally elected to keep them in storage until they were needed for conversion to new drones and warriors. However, that didn't mean they didn't have their uses. Praetorian 5 smiled, with stitched-together lips. Gut Inventory! Praetorian 5's body shone with crimson aether for a moment, and in that moment a torrent of the walking dead flowed out from its form. They poured forth mercilessly, their sheer numbers washing away each and every one of the warriors that had been making their stand in the stairwell. Floors buckled and walls crumbled as the thralls continued to emerge. Some were crushed by the mass of their fellows, but they had already served their purpose. The targets had been separated, and now this place was filled with the Hive's ranks. Ugh, fuck. Countless grasping hands reached for Ruth Blaine, and Ruth Blaine dodged them countless times. She was a blur as she retreated back out of the clogged stairwell, zombies pouring after her. As she skidded to a halt in the middle of the shopping center's ground floor, just before the fountain, Anatrice dropped to the ground next to her. The girl had moved with more speed and grace than Ruth had thought she'd had in her. Ruth cast her a glance. "You okay, kid?" Anatrice narrowed her eyes as she looked back. "I'm older than you," she said seriously. She was doing another weird voice. Was this her ability again? Emo emulation or whatever? Letting her mimic another Aether user? That was probably how she'd managed to beam that weird information into their heads earlier. Well, whatever the case, Ruth supposed it was a good thing she'd done that. It looked like they'd be needing that intel. She adjusted her claws, moonlight shining off the blades as she glared at their approaching enemies. "Powerless! Powerless!" cackled Praetorian 4 as it pooled itself out of the stairwell, taking a huge section of the wall out with it. "It's so sad to be powerless, isn't it, my little meat smears?" Just like the changelog had said, the Praetorian's size had greatly increased. The number of people it was fighting, their level of strength, the injuries it had sustained during the crush on the stairs, they'd all done their work. It was nearly 10 times its original size, and it hadn't been small to begin with. Sorry, 1 second.
I know, it's quite frightening.
Its head nearly scraped against the second floor ceiling as it grinned viciously down at the two of them. That grin, too, had changed. Rather than the jail bars it had previously, now that mouth was lined with razor-sharp fangs. Ruth recognized them from her homeworld, the deadly teeth of a paleo beast. A heavy tail swayed in the air behind the monster, too. An apex predator of the jungle, the tyrant lizard king. It slammed its fists together, the shockwave shattering every piece of glass on the promenade. "What are you waiting for?" it roared. "Come at me!" Anatrice's eyes flicked back over to Ruth. "You have a blade? I fight best with a blade." Red aether sparked from Ruth's hands, and she tossed Anatrice the bayonet alone from the Revolutionaire's set. "Will this do?" The blonde girl flipped the shored blade in her grip, the slightest smirk spreading across her lips. "Yep," she said. "That'll do." A geyser of the living dead exploded out of the roof of the Alan Grace shopping center, and not Alan Grace Memorial.
Sorry.
So who was
Sorry.
Alan Grace? Tell me
He's an
about
ancestor. Well, not right now.
him. Oh, and the warriors flew out with them. Atoy Muzazi relieved a good number of thralls of their heads as he flipped through the air, landing in a crouch as the severed skulls rained down around him. Still, he had slain droplets in a bucket. A tide of the dead continued to flow out around him. Rufus landed a short distance away, Delced and Naguta still slung over his shoulders. He let them slide off his arms and onto the ground, his eyes fixed on the encroaching mass. There was no sign of their numbers abating, fresh thralls crawling out from within the crushed ranks of their brethren. Nebula 5 looked back at Musazi. "Look after these two," Rufus said. "Me and Noct will deal with these things." Indeed, Morgan had come out onto the rooftop too, landing on the other side of the overflowing horde. "Right."
Just
Musazi
make sure
nodded.
not to alert the witch.
The what?
I'm the witch of Aetheral Space!
Right. Musazi nodded, moving over to defend the two on the ground. Aguta seemed to have slipped into unconsciousness again, and Delced still hadn't woken up. Musazi ignited radiance from his hands and whirled around, ready to defend his chargers, when a sword whipped past his head. A thin cut opened on his cheek, and in the same moment Musazi lashed out with a radiant to counter as the blade came for him again. It had flown independently without a wielder, and it made no move to defend itself as Musazi bisected it. It dropped to the floor in two melted pieces. But it wasn't alone. In the changelog that they'd received, there had been mention of one of Praetorian V's abilities, Void Contract. It allowed the creature to turn its subordinates into weapons. What were these thralls, then, if not a legion of ready and waiting subordinates? The tiny figure of Praetorian 5 hovered high above the battlefield, fluttering on vibrating insect wings, and all around it, newly forged, floated eager swords. Each and every one of them had a pair of insect wings to match their masters. Of course, this wouldn't be as easy as just killing zombies. Musazi took a deep breath, adjusted his radiance, and let the storm of blades surge towards him. So bladey.
Swords.
Alright, we have
the bone
some...
of my sword.
You are?
Yeah,
Wow. This guy watches fate.
I am.
I'm proud of you.
I am, I say.
Alright.
I want to be
I'm going to ask a few of
justice.
these. I'm going to ask a few of these, and then I need to go take a cough drop because my throat hurts really
Okay,
bad.
it's okay.
And then we can maybe do another. Room says, what was the last opposing civilization/group to fall before the Gene Tyrants took over?
I don't want to tell you. I don't want to start world building prior to Gene Tyrants because it's a never-ending pit.
Oh, okay.
And anyway, for the sake of the story, I don't want to start from there was an even older civilization.
Yeah, that's fair. Room asks, has the prince ever been hosted by a supreme? If
No.
not, was Hexpa Zoe the closest attempt? If
That
was
would be
what
the
was planned?
closest, yeah.
JT says, question from me, Blair and Weiser. How would appointments one day restriction work in space? Now this, I explained to them, I believe it doesn't
There is a standard
rely...
duration, and that expands or contracts within a certain degree, depending on where he is.
Oh!
At the point it activates.
But it
So
is
there's
still
a little-
based on
It's a little
the
bit
Azum.
away. But
So it's not...
So yeah, he's
Yeah.
got a 20-hour standard, and he can go 5 hours either way, depending on the time zone of where he is. Or in
Okay.
space, it would default to 20 hours.
Interesting. I lied to them then. Lan asks, what are the gang's New Year's resolutions?
Skipper doesn't have one, for obvious reasons.
Ouch.
Dragon would be spoilers.
Damn.
North would be spoilers.
God damn!
Ruth wants the year to end with everyone safe and sound and friends again.
Yeah, that year didn't go so hot for her.
Bruno wants he doesn't know what he wants right now. He's fucked. And Serena wants Bruno to be happy, which we probably won't get.
Wow. Just come out and say it.
Because he's an anxious guy, what can I say? He's not a chill
Jade-
guy.
JT asks, what are the classes of ships? For example, destroyer, cruiser, etc.
It will depend on where you are in the galaxy. Obviously the three major nations, Supremacy, UAP, Final Church, will have their own way of doing that, of classifying that. And of course, then there's a difference with the UAP, members' individual fleets and Unite fleets, which is a bit more standardised. So
I have a question for you.
the top tier of ships are the ones that can do the light point stuff without actually needing a light point.
Oh, they have their own drive to do
Yes.
that. Okay.
And that's things like the Cheshire, the Alexander, which will be later in the story, we'll see. And,
Interesting.
Maybe there are others outside.
Maybe the giant, presumably the giant 3 Final Churches ships.
Yeah, maybe. New Hawk touring.
No. MT brings up something interesting. MT asks, can Anatry simulate non-Aether users, which is no, we know. But they mentioned Macedora, who did unlock Aether at the very end of his life. Could he be emulated?
You probably... You would get a little bit of Macedora, but you would not have like a full personality or anything. You would be able to technically use it on it, but you would receive no benefit, probably.
Okay.
Because it had no time to sort of like sponge or sort of reflect him in any way.
Lance asks, why doesn't Skipper like the UAP?
He's a big independence guy. Politically, he likes planets doing their own thing, and he doesn't like... With the Hex K, he wasn't happy that they had like come out into the universe and immediately got like subsumed into the UAP.
Damn. Alright, well, that's all for now.
That is Skipper's opinion. It's not necessarily my opinion, but...
No, I totally get you. Sorry, no, I'm just trying to wrap this up. I just got distracted by a ping. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.
Bye.